Everyone knows that high ground is one of the strongest positions you can have in Fortnite, but almost nobody knows how to play it properly. Too many players crank up as fast as they can, burn half their mats, and then either get dropped down instantly or lose control because they never understand what holding high ground actually means. High ground is not just about being above your opponent. From a pro's perspective, high ground is a position of control, a weapon you can use to dictate the entire fight, and a tool to suffocate your opponents into wasting mats and making many mistakes. But here's the truth, if you don't know how to use it properly, high ground can actually become the fastest way to throw your game away. So today, I'm going to coach you through it step by step, the same way I would if you were sitting in a private training session with me. We're going to cover how to take high ground without wasting mats, how to actually maintain it, how to apply the right kind of pressure, what advanced tricks pros use to lock it in, and how to play it in stacked endgames, and even when to give it up. By the time we're done, you'll never look at high ground the same way again. The first thing we need to do is reframe what high ground actually is. To the average player, high just means you're above your opponent, but to someone who really understands the game, high ground is so much more than that. High ground is a form of control. When I'm above an opponent, I dictate when the fight begins and when it ends. I control their options, I decide when they burn mats, and I force them into uncomfortable positions. I can starve them of resources, cut off their movements, and apply pressure that makes them feel like every decision is wrong. That's what high ground is really about. Power, but power with responsibility. The reason I say responsibility is because being on height is not automatically safe. It can be one of the most dangerous spots if you play it wrong. I've seen countless players crank up, grab height, and then instantly panic when someone pressures them. They build like crazy, burn through all their mats, and within 30 seconds, they're sitting with almost nothing left while the fight is still going. The difference between someone who truly understands height and someone who doesn't comes down to efficiency, patience, and control. If you treat high ground like a trophy, you'll lose it. If you treat it like a weapon, you'll win way more games with it. Now, let's talk about actually taking high ground, because this is where a lot of players already set themselves up to fail. The instinct most players have is to crank as fast as possible, building 10 stories up in just a few seconds. Sure, that might get you height, but at what cost? You've just burned a ridiculous amount of mats, you're isolated from your team if you're playing duos or trios, and you've probably overextended to the point that someone can just shoot you out. That's not taking high ground with purpose, that's just panicking. The correct way to take height is through timing and efficiency. When I'm looking to grab height, I'm not just looking at how high I can build, I'm thinking about when to build. If my opponent is reloading, that's my window. If they're stuck in their own box trying to heal, that's when I go. If they just wasted a bunch of mats on an overcommit, that's my chance. High ground is not about how many builds you can place per second, it's about identifying those small moments where they're vulnerable and seizing them. When I do crank, I don't waste mats stacking endless walls and ramps. I use clean, efficient 90s, sometimes a quick side jump, or even a diagonal crank that cuts them off. I'm only building what I need to just get above them, not 20 feet higher. Remember, the goal isn't to build the tallest tower in the lobby, it's to get slightly above your opponent and then lock them down from there. That's the mindset shift you need. Don't crank endlessly, crank efficiently. Once you've got high ground, the next step is keeping it without burning through your entire inventory. This is honestly where most players lose fights. Even after they've done the hard part of taking height, they panic every time they hear shots or see someone attempt to retake, and their response is to spam builds like crazy. The problem is, that style of play is completely unsustainable. You're gonna run out of mats way before the fight is over, and once that happens, all the height in the world won't save you. When I'm holding high ground, I don't overreact. I stay calm and I build only what's necessary. If someone tries to retake, I don't panic crank 10 more layers above them. I place a 4, a cone, maybe a quick wall to cut them off, and I stay locked in. My builds are tight, clean, and efficient. Only optimal edits. If you watch pro players closely, every single build they place has a purpose, whether it's protecting themselves, blocking a retake, or creating an angle to shoot. That's the mindset you need to adopt. Stop thinking of building as something you spam to feel safe, and start thinking of it as a resource you spend carefully, like ammo. If you treat your mats like they're infinite, you'll never survive an actual endgame. Now that you're holding height, the real question becomes, what are you doing with it? Because here's the truth. If you're just sitting on high ground, admiring the view, you're wasting one of the strongest advantages in Fortnite. High ground is not a defensive spot, it's an offensive tool. The whole point of being above is to make your opponent's life miserable. And the way you do that is through enough pressure. But here's the catch. Pressure doesn't mean spraying endlessly with your AR until you're out of ammo. That's lazy and once again ineffective. True pressure is smart, controlled, and timed. I don't shoot at random. I wait for moments if my opponent edits their walls, and that's when I beam them. If they start to rotate, that's when I line up my shots. If I see them healing, I instantly punish it. My goal isn't to kill them instantly, my goal is to suffocate them. I want them to feel like every action they take comes with a cost in mats, in health, and in their time. That's how pressure from height really works. Think about it this way. Every shot you land forces them to burn more resources. If you tag them, they have to stop and heal. If you block their retake, they just wasted mats. If you break their builds, they have to spend more time just to stay alive. High ground, when used properly, is like a slow chokehold on your opponent. You're not going for the knockout right away, you're tightening the grip until they have nothing left. That's how you play height like a pro. Another massive mistake players make on height is tunnel vision. They get so focused on one opponent that they completely forget about everything else around them. And trust me, that's a fast way to get shot out or blindsided by someone else. High ground gives you vision, and if you're not using it, you're wasting half of its power. When I'm on height, I'm constantly scanning. Every few seconds, I take my eyes off my main target and quickly check the rest of the fight. I'm looking at who's rotating, who's running low on mats, who's distracted, and who's trying to sneak in. That information is priceless, and it's something that only high ground gives you. Average players don't think about this. They tunnel, vision on one box, and spray until they're empty. But pros are like hawks. They're watching everything, waiting for the right moment to strike. If you start building that habit, scanning, analyzing, and choosing the most vulnerable targets, you'll not only hold height better, but you'll also start making smarter plays overall. That's why you usually see the players on height have the most kills, because they have so many different opportunities to look at different players to get different kills. Now let's get into some of the advanced tricks that almost nobody outside of the competitive players use. The first is baiting height swaps. Sometimes I'll intentionally let an opponent think they can retake. I'll give them just enough space to crank up, and then I'll cut them off with a perfectly timed floor or cone. That wastes a huge amount of their mats, completely shuts down their attempt, and keeps me in control without overcommitting too much. Another trick is layering. Instead of just sitting on one flat floor, I'll place a floor and a cone, or even double layer multiple builds, and when I know someone is about to challenge, it costs slightly more mats in the moment, but it makes it 10 times harder for them to break through, and it buys me time to reset and punish their attempt. And then there are diagonal retakes. Instead of just building straight up, I angle my build slightly to the side, which cuts off their angles and forces them into bad positions. This isn't something you'll see casual players do, but it's incredibly effective for keeping control. Remember, high ground isn't just vertical, it's all about angles, timing, and anticipation too. The more unpredictable you are with how you hold height, the less chance anyone has from taking it from you. But Endgame changes everything, and holding high ground in stacked lobbies is a completely different skill set than holding it in a normal fight. In Endgame, mats are everything. If you have height, your number one priority is connecting your builds. You cannot afford to get shot out. I always make sure my height is tied into multiple layers below me, even if it costs me an extra few mats. Think of it as insurance. The price is small, but it can save your entire game. The second thing is positioning. I never sit in the same dead center of zone when I have height. That might feel safe, but actually makes you target from every angle. Instead, play on the edge of zone. From there, you can beam players rotating in, keep vision on the entire lobby, and conserve mats while still holding full control. And finally, mat tracking. If I'm under 200 mats in endgame while holding height, I already know I need to start making some plays. Either I frag out to replenish, or I make the decision to drop and reset. Height is only powerful if you can keep it, and in endgame, you can't keep it without mats. That's the reality most players don't want to accept. There's also a huge mental aspect to height that a lot of players overlook. When you're above someone, they feel pressure just from looking up at you. That psychological pressure is massive. Even if you're not hitting huge shots, just the fact that they know they're there makes them panic. They'll overbuild, they'll burn mats fast, they'll mistime their heals. That's the kind of invincible pressure you should always be applying. But it works both ways. High ground can also make you cocky. I've seen countless players lose fights because they thought being above meant they were untouchable. They peek recklessly, waste mats, or forget to watch their surroundings. That's why I always remind myself, respect the position. You're not invincible just because you're higher up. If you treat it like a guaranteed win, it'll definitely punish you. If you treat it like a tool that you have to respect, it will definitely reward you. And here's the final lesson. Sometimes the best play is to give up high ground. That might sound crazy, but it's true. If you're sitting on height with less than 100 mats and zone pulls far, holding height is no longer a win condition for you. It's a death sentence. You'll get shot out, you'll run out of builds, and you'll have nothing left to fight with. The smartest move is to drop, reset, and look for a better opportunity. The same goes when someone overcommits for taking height, and you know they've invested more than you can match. Let them have it. Then punish them when they overextend or run out of mats. High ground isn't always worth dying for. The real skill isn't just holding it, it's knowing when it's worth and when it's not. That's something you only learn through experience. But once you internalize it, you'll stop throwing games out of stubbornness. So, what's the secret to all of this? Playing high ground correctly isn't about how high you build, how fast your 90s are, or how many people you can beam. It's all about control. Control of your mats, control of your angles, control of timing, and control of the fight. If you understand that, you'll stop wasting high ground and start using it to win consistently. So next time you grab height, don't just crank and hope. Think about your mats, think about how you're applying pressure, think about where the zone is pulling, who's rotating, and how much control you really have. Once you start playing the height the way it's meant to be played, smart, calculated, and suffocating, you'll notice the difference instantly. More wins, more confidence, and fewer throws. That's the difference between someone who just gets high ground and someone who plays high ground like a pro. Anyways, guys, that is it for today's video. Thank you guys for taking time out of your day to watch my video. If you don't mind, drop a like, hit that subscribe button, and if you want to support me even more, use code FLOWN in the Fortnite item shop. Also, join the Discord. It will help you guys get better 10 times faster. And once again, I love you all. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace, guys.